All right, so I would like to take to open the meeting of the Dutchess County LDC. Jasmine, could you please take the roll call?
Yes. Tim Dean,
Present?
Mark Doyle,
Yeah.
Kathy Bauer,
Here.
Stacy Leventhal,
Here.
Jamie Picone,
Here.
Don Sagliano,
Here.
Al Torrigiani.
Here.
Sorry.
Okay.
about that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. The first thing I would like to mention again is if anybody has a conflict of interest that they're aware of based on the agenda, I would ask that they please state so now.
This is Stacy Langenthal.
Yes, Stacy.
I have a conflict with regard to the revolving loan fund because working for a bank, we offer similar products. So in order to avoid any appearance of a conflict of interest, I'm going to abstain from that discussion and vote.
Thank you very much, Stacy. And at the time of that discussion, we will make arrangements for you to be disconnected, and then we will reconnect with you after that discussion. Does anybody else have any conflict of interest?
Tim, this is Kathy Bauer. I also
Yes.
have a conflict of interest with the COVID-19 loan fund because I work for a bank as well.
Okay. Thank you very much for stating so. And at that time, again, we will make arrangements for you to be removed from the meeting discussion.
Tim, this is Sarah.
Yes.
Given that we have two conflicts, I was wondering if you may want to change the order of the agenda at that part and maybe perhaps talk about have the budget discussion and then talk about the revolving loan fund afterwards. And that way Stacy and Kathy can just exit the meeting and then we can adjourn it without them.
Okay. Are you suggesting that we do that now?
Yes, so we'll just as a change to the
Yes.
agenda. While we'll have the full order, just when we get to the new business, we'll just change items B and C. We'll talk about C first before.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so we'll move through the rest of the agenda until then. So that's what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Proof of is there any other conflicts before we move on? Okay. Proof of meeting notice. Can you have that be confirmed?
Yes, the meeting notice was posted last week.
Thank you. Are there any bills and communications that need to be discussed?
No.
Okay. I'd like to ask if everybody has had an opportunity to review the minutes of the meeting, the last meeting, and if so, if there are any questions or corrections. Hearing none, I would like to ask for a motion for the approval of the minutes.
Al Torrigiani, so moved.
Stacy Langenthal, so moved.
Stacy, would you be willing to second Al's motion? Stacy, would you be willing to second Al's motion to approve? Could I get somebody else to approve?
Jamie Picone will second.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Jamie seconded Al's motion. Jasmine, will you please take a vote?
Yes. Tim Dean,
Approved.
Mark Doyle,
Approved.
Kathy Bauer,
Approved.
Stacy Leventhal,
Approve.
Jamie Picone,
Approved.
Don Sagliano,
Approved.
Al Torrigiani.
Approved.
Thank you all. Okay, report of the treasurer.
Oh.
You're muted.
Marilyn, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Looking at the balance sheet, we currently have 2.9 million in cash available. We have an accounts receivable of 153,000. Most of that is from the IDA, so I would say that we are going to get that. Nothing else unusual on the balance sheet. Looking at our P&L, As of April 30th, everything looks good. I don't have any other comments at this point. Does
Okay,
anyone have any questions?
this is Tim Dean. My question, is there anything within our accounts receivable as of the moment that you're aware of that could affect our, material impact our P&L?
No.
Thank you. Any other questions for Marilyn?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Don Sagliano, I have a question for Marilyn. Marilyn, you said that there's an accounts receivable from the IDA?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, does the IDA have a corresponding account payable to the LDC?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the financial report.
Mark Doyle, I'll make a motion to approve the financial report.
Can I get a second?
Al Torriani, I'll second.
Thank you, Al. Jasmine, will you please take a vote?
Yes. Tim Dean,
I approve.
Mark Doyle,
Approve.
Kathy Bauer,
Approve.
Stacy Lagenthal,
Approve.
Jamie Picone,
Approved.
Don Sagliano,
Approved.
Al Torriani.
Approved.
Okay, all of those have been, that report has been approved. Report of committees. Are there any committees that need to report, Sarah?
No.
Okay, unfinished business. Is this where we should discuss the employment matter?
Yes, please.
Okay, at this time, I would like to mention that at a prior meeting on February 12th, 2020, the board entered into an executive session to discuss the employment history and 2019 performance of our CEO, Sarah Lee. We noted at that time that Sarah has performed her duties at a very high level and to our satisfaction. And we discussed her 2020 salary and compensation. And before voting on the approval of that salary, the board wanted to give Sarah the opportunity to bring anything to the board's attention that she thought might be that we should consider during her salary review. And so after the meeting, I did meet with Sarah and we discussed her performance in great detail. And we had a very amicable discussion about how she feels about her job and also how the board feels about her performance. And based on the review of her performance, I would like to entertain a motion that Sarah be granted the salary increase that was granted to all members of the staff, which was 3%, effective January 1st, 2020. This would bring her annual salary to $109,272. And I would also like to recommend that we continue the practice of a prior year when we provided Sarah with an additional $7,000 in performance bonus as part of her compensation. Again, that amount is the same amount that was done the prior year. At this time, does anybody have any questions or comments from the board about this proposal? Okay, hearing none, I would like to ask if someone would be willing to make a motion to approve the proposal to increase Sarah's salary by 3% to $109,272 effective January 1st, 2020, and to provide her with a $7,000 bonus, which is the same amount as the prior year for her performance in 2019.
So moved, Stacy Langenthal.
Thank you, Stacy. Can I get a second, please?
Mark Doyle.
Second, Kathy Bauer.
Let's use Kathy Bauer as a second. And now, Jasmine, if you could take a vote.
Yes, sure. Tim Dean,
Approved?
Mark Doyle,
Approved.
Kathy Bauer,
Approved.
Stacy Lagerthal,
Approved.
Jamie Picone,
Approved.
Don Sagliano,
Approved.
Al Torjani.
Approved.
Okay. So now, Sarah, I'm trying to understand what you recommend as the order for the next new business stage.
So the next business would be the Poughkeepsie Day School.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask Sarah and Don Capolino to discuss the Poughkeepsie Day School issue.
Yeah, so I'll just say a few words and then Don will finish up because he's really been in the conversations with the attorneys on this matter. But as you may have read or heard, the Poughkeepsie Day School has announced that it won't reopen in the fall. They currently hold a bond issued through the LDC, and as part of the closing procedures has requested the LDC board to consent several certain waiver documents. So with that, I'm going to let Don go into the details. Don Capolino.
Okay, this is Don Capolino. Thank you. On Wednesday, May 6th, in the afternoon, I sent the board an explanation of a resolution that would be forthcoming from bond counsel on this matter. I gave the full explanation that morning I had a conference call with the people from M&T Bank, Poughkeepsie Day School, and bond counsel on this prior deal that dates back to 2010. As you know, Poughkeepsie Day School purchased property on Boardman Road, and they moved there. And they've been there, but they've been having a problem, financial problem with tuition collection. So they were looking for a delay in the payments. The problem is that if it's not done properly under the Internal Revenue Code provisions, they could lose their tax exempt status. The bonds were all purchased by M&T Bank with the understanding there would be tax exemption, and they could then call and foreclose. And the school was asking for a forbearance. But if there's a forbearance and it doesn't meet certain requirements, it could be determined a reissuance. And if it's a reissuance, then it could lose its tax exempt status. It's a rather complex provision of the Internal Revenue Code and regulations. And so bond counsel had to be directly involved in all of this. The bond counsel here has also represented the bank in other circumstances. So the last paragraph here asks for a waiver to allow bond counsel to represent the parties here without, so that no one can claim there's a conflict. All they're doing is they're just delaying the payments for 6 months and up to the end of the year. There's a clear indication that there may very well be a foreclosure at the end of this, but there are safe harbor provisions in the Internal Revenue Code that allow this to be delayed, and so they have met. They're meeting those, and bond counsel will ensure that they've presented this resolution on Friday afternoon after they got all the details from Poughkeepsie Day School. It's a fast-moving matter. They haven't made their payments since the April 1st payment, and they just want to make sure that everything is lined up so the school can do what it has to do. And it's likely going to, it may very well close and sell the property, but if it doesn't close, they're saying it will be at least the next year. They will not be having classes, and they may moving to a different site. And the bonds, the amount of the bonds balance that I gave you in that email is $1,444,308.18. There is in the resolution, I would ask that you consider two small changes from the one that bond counsel provided. The first one is that the time of the meeting, is scheduled for 8:10, not 8 o'clock, as he said. And the second, in section 2, at the end of section 2F, it says if there's a space for the board to impose additional conditions on they're granting a waiver here to allow this forbearance to take place. And I would suggest you just insert the word none, because we don't recommend any additional conditions. If the board has any, well, then they should consider that and place them in here. But all they're doing is, they're asking for assistance here. We've issued the bond. The payment was due by the end of this year, and it looks like they just can't make it. They're not going to be able to extend. So this is just allows them a little additional time, and the bank is approving it. They're holding the bond, and they are consenting to this. So if the bank consents to, if they don't consent to it, then they will go through the process. But if they do consent to it, it was working its way up through the chain, and it's expected that they very well may. That's why they're going through this, and they apologize for the urgency of the matter and it coming in so late. But this was, they're operating under very distressed circumstances.
John, just for everybody's, to confirm to everybody, the Poughkeepsie Day School is a not-for-profit organization, not a for-profit.
Correct. Yeah, correct. It is.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a motion from somebody to approve this resolution.
But with the insertion of the word none and
the 810 change, and
the
also
810.
and the acknowledgement that we are aware of the last paragraph outlining the waiver of any conflict issues. Could I get a motion?
I'll make a motion for the approval of the resolution as stated with the change mentioned by our chairman.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Doyle. Can I get a second, please?
Okay.
Jamie Picone, second.
Thank you, Jamie. Okay, Jasmine, would you please take a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sure. Tim Dean,
In favor?
Mark Doyle,
Yes, in favor.
Kathy Barra,
Approve.
Stacy Lagenthal,
In favor?
Jamie Picone,
In favor.
Don Sagliano,
In favor?
Al Torrigiani.
Approved.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've all approved of that. Now we have the, Sarah, I think that, I did hear what your comments were, but I think that we need to move through these in the order which we have them. Because the approval of the discussion of the COVID-19 relief program, that will also determine a portion of the budget discussion, don't you think?
So yeah, that's fine. We can proceed
Yes.
as the agenda is written.
So what we're going to have to do at this point is ask both Stacy and Kathy to drop off, and then we can contact them when the discussion is over if they're available to come back on for the budget discussion.
Yes.
Tim, this is Stacy Langenthal. I do have a
Yes.
commitment at work, so I will not be back.
Okay. Thank you.
Sarah, this is Kathy. Just send me a
Goodbye.
text message when you want me to dial back in.
Okay, I will.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye.
Okay, just to confirm that we still have a quorum, is that correct, Marilyn and Sarah?
Correct. We still have
Yes.
5 members of the board present.
Yeah.
Okay. So for those who are still on the call, just again, a general statement before we discuss the specifics here. As we all know, the county and our country in general are in a bit of a crisis right now due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Many businesses have been forced to shut down at a great loss of revenue, and even businesses that are remaining open have seen a tremendous decline in revenue. Unemployment numbers are high, and so it's the desire of all organizations to do what they can to help us through this short-term time period. And short-term, unfortunately, is a little bit longer than we're used to calling short-term. So, that has caused, I've asked Sarah as a result of that to give thought to ways that the IDA and LDC, in this case the LDC, based on our abilities and our mission, what could we consider doing in very short order, because time is of the essence for many businesses. Is there anything that we could do to help our local businesses based on what we're seeing out there need-wise, and also based on how we fit into the overall picture of helping business? There's several organizations that have been meeting on a weekly basis, talking about what each of them could do. People like the Chamber of Commerce, for example, all part of the Dutchess County sort of economic development group, have been meeting. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sarah and ask her to outline a potential program that we could have. And just the other thing that I'm going to say is, because time is of the essence and there's so much changing so rapidly, one of the things that we are probably going to have to do is to ask the board to give Sarah and perhaps myself some latitude on the details of the final program, just because of all of the discussions that take place within this network. But again, we will try and discuss giving you as much of the detail that we can, so that the board is comfortable that we've performed the proper diligence on anything that we move forward with. So I know there'll be a lot of questions and comments, and we'll welcome those. But Sarah, why don't you kick off and talk a little bit about how we got to the point of this potential program.
So thanks, Tim. This is Sarah. As you are aware, on the IDA side, IDAs are prohibited from lending or granting any other funds. The LDC has a little bit more leeway when it comes to that. And so through the LDC, we are, the board is considering this morning to create a COVID-19 emergency business relief program to provide our small businesses in Dutchess County that were impacted by the COVID-19 crisis with short-term financial relief. So these would be loans up to $10,000. They would be limited to Dutchess County businesses. Our intent is to offer them at 0% interest, and they would be have a term of 36 months, with the businesses being able to defer payment on the loan up to a period of time. So as Tim said, we are moving very quickly to get this program done, and we still need to iron out some of the details, but for the discussion here is to lay out parameters that the board may want to have in place for this, and as we work with a partner to be able to release these funds to our community.
Sarah, one of the things I'd like to ask you to just comment on is how did you, and how in working with the county executive's office and the other members of this informal network, I would call it, how did you come about identifying the specific niche of businesses that we felt that we could address?
So yeah, early on during the crisis, through the partners of the Economic Development Consortium here in Dutchess County under Think Dutchess Alliance, which includes the IDA, the LDC, tourism, the chamber, SBA, SBDC, WEDC, WIB, the Workforce Investment Board. We sent out a joint survey through the Business Notification Network to our contacts. And with the responses that we received, we saw that there was a need for small business loans to our local businesses. That was something that these businesses were looking for assistance during this COVID program. So out of that came out this proposal of providing temporary financial relief.
And the size of the business that was identified as most in need for this type of program, can you elaborate on that?
So yeah, so those businesses that did say that they needed financial relief reported that they had 5 or less full-time employees in their business. I would also say, to be even more specific, full-time equivalents, because while they may have 2 or 3 full-time employees, they will often have 4 employees working for their business.
Sarah, I'm going to ask you to back up for a second. We did not hear the last 2 sentences while you broke up. So could you say that again?
So I will be a little bit more detailed in saying that they would say I would go and say that these were 5 or these businesses had 5 or less FTE. So some of these businesses may have 3 full-time employees, but they would have more part-time employees. So they would have 4 or 5 part-time employees. So that's how we identified that 5 or less FTEs.
So, Sarah, I'm just prompting you along a bit, just because of our discussions. I'm listening, and I want to hopefully head off some questions that would be asked anyways. Can you talk about the amount of funds that we're talking about and how our funds may be utilized for this type of program?
So yeah, so again, while the details are still being ironed out, what we're proposing is to commit up to $500,000 of the LDC fund to support this program.
Okay, and what would that be? Just discuss briefly some of the options that are, being discussed right now, as far as, would it be our capital being, the 500,000 being used to actually distribute as loan amounts, or is it fees? What is it?
So there are a couple of options that are on the table. I've had conversations with Community Capital New York, which we have approached to perhaps assist us in administering these funds. The options range from us administering the loan fund and dedicating up to $500,000 with that fund, so the LDC would administer them, or a contract where if these businesses approach Community Capital New York, which currently does operate a COVID emergency relief fund up to $10,000, whether we set our own parameters and those businesses that apply through Community Capital for these businesses, we cover the administrative costs for those applications, allowing for 0% interest for these businesses for the loan. Currently, Community Capital New York does charge an interest rate for their emergency loan program, but our intent is to offer these loans at 0% interest, so we would subsidize those loans by covering the administrative costs for Dutchess County businesses. Those are the range of options.
Okay, so I just want to, again, I want to just attempt to clarify a little bit. So we are trying to move rapidly in seeing the possibilities of what we could do. the amount that Sarah and I have talked about within the scope of what we can afford as a organization to put out there. One possibility would be that we would make available $500,000 in funds that would be loaned out. And on top of that, we would pay for those businesses that are chosen under that scenario. There's a $250 application fee, which would cover community capital's cost to administer the loans. Under that scenario, however, the IDA would be the ones that have to actually bill and collect the funds. That is something that we only became aware of yesterday. And so that would create a lot of work for the IDA. We are not in the business of loan processing, nor are we in the business of foreclosing on loans that aren't paid. So that would be a very big burden on us. And I'm not sure it's something that we can do with our existing staff. The second alternative would be that we would set the guidelines for the loaning of money under our program. We would tell community capital what our underwriting requirements would be. They would use capital that they have available through whatever means they gather capital. They would loan out the money, and we would pay community capital to administer the cost of that program using their capital. And it's estimated that our expense on the amounts loaned would be 9% of the loaned amounts. And that would not be a revolving loan fund. That would be us actually just paying out the cost of administration of 9%. So, and we would pay no more than our $500,000 offered for those loan expenses. So under that scenario, we would not be expecting the money to come back at all. There may be other options that are somewhere in between that. And I guess what I would ask Sarah and to talk about, and perhaps Don, is under either scenario, what are the covenants that we would be putting on the loans as far as the requirements or the minimum standards that would be allowed before money was loaned?
Don Capolino, did you want to?
You.
I was trying to get to it. The outline that you have, Exhibit A to the resolution, sets forth what the terms are and how, to qualify, they have to do that. They have to meet all of those. Once that is done,
Don, I apologize, but I'm going to ask you to actually state what those are. I know it'll take a little time, but I think it's important that people do know.
Okay. To qualify, the business has to be physically located in Dutchess County. All the business owners must have a credit score of at least 650 and no derogatory information for the last 6 months. No more than $1,000 in unresolved judgments, liens, collections, or charge-offs. No past due on any debt or obligation such as rents, utilities, and child support. No negative or derogatory information on your credit score in the past 12 months. No personal bankruptcy in the last 36 months except for medical reasons. Anyone who has 20% or more of a stake in business needs to be part of the application process and personally guarantee the loan. Startups and businesses less than a year old may not be considered. I think you wanted to say that shall not be considered there. And applying for the business applying for the loan can demonstrate positive net income according to the most recent federal tax return. The only thing I would add is for on that bullet point on number 3, no past due, I'm sorry, number 2, which is no more than $1,000 in any unresolved judgments, liens, collections, or charge off. I can be clear on that. If somebody has a mortgage lien on their property, that would not be disqualifying. But those are the parameters. So anyone who doesn't qualify will not be considered. After that, and then there are certain businesses that are also excluded. So once you go through that, you now are dealing with the people that are the targeted people, and they would be qualified and approved for the loan.
So, okay, so I want to just add a couple things there. We also were going to add a limitation on the number of employees, because the survey, and from what we've been talking about within the Think Dutchess network, is these are to be targeted for people that were having a successful business in Dutchess County before the COVID crisis, and had this not happened, they wouldn't be needing money. They had they met these requirements. We don't want to be loaning money to people that were already in financial jeopardy prior to the COVID crisis. That's not the intention of this. And also, we wanted to focus on the people that appear to be having the most difficulty getting funds from other sources, and that were the businesses that, and I'm going to ask Sarah to describe the number limitations that she's recommending, but this would be restricted to small business. And Sarah, perhaps you could tell us the number.
Yeah, so we would restrict them to the small businesses, and they would be restricted to be consistent with what the findings of the BNN survey is. I would say right now, the survey says, 5 or less FTEs. At this point, that's what the survey said for FTEs. That is, but the reason I'm a little hesitant is I'm wondering if 5 or less might be too restrictive, if we wanted to move that up to maybe 10 FTEs as our businesses, because most of our small businesses in Dutchess County have 25 or less total employees, whether that's part-time and full-time. And so I would not want to, those businesses are also under stress, and not to necessarily limit it to such a small employee count.
So the original proposal was 5, I apologize. The original proposal was 5 full-time employees or less, and you would like to change that to 10 FTEs,
yes,
which would allow for businesses that have a little bit higher number of part-timers involved.
correct.
Okay.
And then the other one that I would like to add is that because we want to target to those businesses that have not been able to secure any of the federal or state programs, such as the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, as well as the emergency loans through the SBA, the EIDL loans, so that we would be asking these businesses that they would attest that they were not able to secure those loans, or any other COVID-related aid, such as a grant or other type of emergency loan program.
Okay, so at this point, I'm sure there's a number of questions, and I'm going to open up the floor. And what I would ask is if you just would, if you have a question, state your name, and then I'll call on you as I hear you, and I'll make sure that we get to everybody.
Okay, Al Turgiani. Sarah,
Yes.
what businesses are you getting calls on for this?
So I'm getting we're getting inquiries from a lot of they're small businesses. They tend to be retail based businesses, restaurants, even we're getting small farm stands that they have made a retail component to it. Those are the businesses, but also I know we've gotten inquiries from a very small manufacturer that's family owned that has, while they have had trouble getting into the EIDL and they were shut out of the EIDL program. In the meantime, we have been working with them to get, to apply for the PPP program. Perhaps at that time, by the time this is launched, that manufacturer won't qualify for our program, but there are, small businesses like that would qualify. So these are, like Tim said, these are businesses that pandemic were doing well, but because of the stay-at-home order, the limitations on their businesses, that they just have not been able to. They're just going to need assistance to reopen. I will also say in the survey that a large number of respondents said that they had 4 weeks of cash on hand or less. So this would also target those that had that 4 weeks shut down.
It's in my backpack.
About 8 weeks now. So a lot of those businesses will probably need that aid.
Who's also going to be responsible for the vetting process?
So the vetting process, we are in discussions with Community Capital New York. They issue these loans. They're a CDFI. They are Certified Community Development Funding Institution. They provide loans. That's their business. Again, as I mentioned earlier, they have an emergency business loan program currently running, and so this program would be consistent with the way that they run their their emergency loan program. We would just put on these additional parameters and requirements that these loans would be limited to Dutchess County businesses.
So just to add on to that, we would sign a contract with them under that scenario, and that they would be required to obviously follow the contract, and there would be an indemnification provision in the contract if they fail to do so. But we also would be getting reports from them as far as who they're loaning to, and we would be getting some type of weekly or monthly summary, and certainly we would do some type of auditing to make sure that that they're complying with the provisions. But on the individual loans, under the scenario that I think I personally prefer, is they would be the ones to to check off the boxes to make sure people fit the definition of who we want to help. Does anybody else have any questions?
This is Mark Doyle. I do, and I was wondering whether there is any indication, Sarah or Don, that these companies had already made applications for other funding and had failed, or looking at it slightly differently, whether that should be part of the criteria that an effort had been made to find funding elsewhere.
Yeah, so as part of this, because we want to limit, and increase the effectiveness of our funds, is that they would have to make an attestation that they made an attempt, or that at least they have not received any aid that is from a COVID-related program, such as the PPP or the EIDL loans, or any of the existing COVID programs that are out there. Don Sagliano, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Sarah. I wanted to make some overriding commentary regarding this process. So in working with Ron Hicks and the administration, as well as with Sarah and Chairman Dean, there was a significant omission for these small, very, very small businesses where they were shut out of the SBA PPP process. I would say the EIDL process was also very cumbersome from personal insight that I have from the program. The Midwest states received more per capita from both of these programs than New York State businesses. As anybody knows, whether it's considered political or overblown, New York State specifically, areas south of where we currently live, were hit very, very hard with the COVID virus, as well as Metro New Jersey and southeastern Connecticut. So we need to, as a county, we need to support the local small Main Street businesses within our county. So this program will help businesses that got locked out of the SBA, and it's going to allow them at least to be able to have a seat at the table while they figure out alternative measures or how they can remain in business. Because right now, these businesses are the most severely impacted. We're talking about, companies or entities that have 5 full-time equivalents or less. As Sarah indicated, they may have 4 or 5 temporary employees or related contractors, such in the case of a hair salon where the primary principal owns the salon and each seat is sold to independent businesses. These people need our help. We need to push this forward. We need to carry the flag for Dutchess County, and I wholeheartedly support this, and we need to get it moved on as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Just a comment about these loans too, is that we are calling them working capital loans. We're not restricting their use to a specific thing, and I think that's important. Some of the other loans and relief that are out there require people, it's very narrow in how it may be used. During a time of, the position we're in right now, which is where businesses are thinking about starting back up again. They need some working capital. It could be to get inventory, or it could be to incur expenses needed to reopen their doors. And so the fact that we give them a little more flexibility in how they use the money, I think is another good part about this. Any other questions about the structure of the loans themselves before we talk about the financial impact that it would have on our budget? Okay, so I would like to just ask everybody to take a look at the just for the discussion purposes, the LDC budget scenarios that we sent out.
Oh,
I just want to address the specific situation, Sarah, of if we do this loan fund, how it would affect the budget as it stands right now.
did you want to have that discussion without Kathy?
I think this particular narrow part of it, yes, because it's still about this loan. It's not about our budget overall.
So what I want to do is also share my screen with the board.
Okay. And what I want to focus on right now, just within those documents, is the current year projected 2020 budget with the potential expense of the $500,000, being expended.
You see people see my hold on. You see people see my screen?
We
Scenario
can.
one? Okay.
So what I would like to talk about, there is, the first column is our 2019 year. And the item that I wanted to just point out for reference sake is under operating revenue. You will see that there is a service contract revenue of 625, and which is inclusive of county support. And our expenses under professional services contracts of 252,000. Okay, and so Sarah, what I'd like to talk about is under 2020, we still show the revenues as we know them to be based on our budget. But down below, you'll see that under the professional service contracts, we've increased the amount that would be spent up. It could be as much as $500,000 as we're discussing. And so that would, change the amount of assets that we have. Obviously, it would be more expenses than we had originally projected. So you can see that we would have added to our expenses, and our assets would be 2,303,000 versus, had we not done this program, they would be 2,803,000, assuming that, again, that we expended all of the 500,000 in this budget year. So I just wanted people to know what that would do to our current year projections, all else being equal. And just to make just a few more comments, under these assumptions, again, we assume that under expenses that all 500,000 would be expended during this year. And we also do not put in up above, we do not have any assumption for any revenue begin to be paid back. It would be, under one scenario, it would be a loan fund. If it was a loan fund, it's, there would be some payments by people that we loan to coming back to us. But again, what I want to make sure that I clearly outline is, as of the way things have developed over the last 24 hours, it may turn out that if we're being asked to actually administer the loan, I really don't see how we could do that. We're not a lending agency. We don't have the capabilities of billing people and advising late payments and all of those things. So it's entirely possible that we may have to actually move to an arrangement where, rather than being the source of the funds to loan, we would be the source of covering the cost for somebody else to administer loans to the people that fit the definition of what we have. We would be covering the cost to administer those loans. And we would say that the most administration fees that we would pay would be up to $500,000, which would not have any type of repayment. That would be spent, and it would not be, there would be no source of collection as of this time. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't be looking elsewhere to find out if we could get grants or something to help us with that. But in that case, we would have no future sources of repayment of the money that we spent. Either scenario, we've tried to do the worst case and look at the impact that it could have. Sarah, was there any other discussions or is there any, talk about any other possibilities that were discussed in the meeting yesterday that are some hybrid of what I described, if any?
So no, I think you'd made a description of the options that are available to us now. There is you know, there may be an option where Community Capital New York, you know, runs the fund for us. There are a lot of complications and challenges in that model, but that, and it needs to be explored further, primarily by Community Capital of New York, because this is not typically how they do these programs. But I think those are really the two, if we want to just see the impact, would be those two options that you had described.
Okay, and then just another comment, you know, under whatever scenario is considered, I just want the board to know that the maximum that we would be willing to expend under this proposal that we're presenting would be $500,000 in total, whether it would be loan amounts put out or expenses that we help to cover for someone else to do the loans. The most that we would be making available would be $500,000 for the combination of those types of things.
May I just ask, in the
Yes.
scenario of the latter scenario of using the funds for interest and expenses, is there a calculation of how much actual loan funding that would leverage?
Yes, Sarah and I did talk about that briefly. Sarah, do you want to just comment on that? I mean, if we assume they have suggested that the amount, the administration cost, if we were to do that scenario, would be about 9% of the loan amounts.
Yeah.
So if we use 10% as a rough amount that for proceeds, we came up with, was it 5 million? Sarah?
I think it was, yes, 5 million.
Yeah, because 10% of 5 million is 500,000. So that would be, the amount available for lending would be much higher under that scenario. But again, under that scenario, our money put out would be, you know, would be spent and not, it would not be a revolving, you know, loan where we might get some back. On the other hand, at the same time, if I think that to be conservative on the lending side, we would have to assume that there may be a high default rate on these loans just because of the businesses, the scenario that the businesses have. So under either one, I don't think that we would recover, even on the revolving loan fund, I don't think we would recapture all of our money back, but you know, certainly we would capture some.
Excuse me for the second time.
No, okay.
So under that latter model, would our criteria still stand, or would there be a separate set of criteria administered by the community finance?
We would seek to add whatever criteria you normally have for their emergency fund. We would add ours on top of that. Did that answer your question?
Well, would that in effect make it more restrictive, or
yes,
you know, make it more able to be targeted?
It's our understanding that theirs is more liberal than ours. Ours would be more restrictive because of the survey that we did and the discussions that we've had within the group. You know, we want this to go to a very targeted group of small businesses that were being successful, but for this scenario.
I would also add that while it would be restrictive in the sense that it would be restricted to Dutchess County businesses, I don't think it would be restrictive in terms of being burdensome to these Main Street businesses that would be applying to them. It was just that it would make sure that our funds were going to the businesses that we wanted to target for them, which, you know, again, as Don Sagliano pointed out, are these small businesses in our community along Main Street, along, you know, the more rural areas of the county that, you know, we're doing well, that we're pillars of their community, but because of this crisis has really been dealt a blow and, are in need of these funds. So we would add more restrictions in the sense that, we would limit them to Dutchess County businesses and then maybe the number of employees, but, and then any other term that the board would feel that it would need so that it could meet the intended target of these loans.
So Sarah, just to clarify, we've already outlined to the board a list of restrictions that we were going to place on if we were loaning the money. Would those same exact restrictions be applied to the second scenario where we would be paying the cost of administering the loans given by somebody else? It's my understanding that we would look to have similar restrictions on that scenario. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Does that better help you, Mark?
Yes, thank you. Sorry if I may.
No.
So community finance, have they indicated that they have, let's say, for this argument, up to $5 million available for funding us? Do they have a strong stream of income or stream of funding?
So they currently they do have a strong stream of income. They don't have, I would say, $5 million dedicated to Dutchess County businesses. However, they are in the process of applying for a grant through the SBA to increase that funding, and that they do hope that they would be able to have more funds to be able to service this program as well as their emergency loan program, so that they can service more businesses.
And this does remind me, I want to also mention one thing that, is, I think, important. We are proposing that our money be loaned at a 0% interest rate, which is lower than what may be available under some of their other programs. So there may be people who, for purposes of affordability, would not have applied at 2%, who may apply because of our ability to subsidize the cost of administering these and offering at 0%. But I also need to qualify that. Don Capolino has reminded Sarah and I that he still needs to research and make sure that we are allowed to offer loans at 0%. And as long as there's no federal or state guideline that, caused us to have to charge more, that's what we would do. But if there were some provisions that required us to charge a 1 or 2%, well, we would do it as low as possible. We want to try and get it as close to 0% as possible. Other questions? Okay, so Don, would you talk, or Sarah, I think I'm going to ask Don. Don, would you talk about the authorization that the board has in front of them, and what I want them to understand what leeway, that resolution allows Sarah and you and I on the final decision on what's done. I want them to be comfortable, but I also want them to understand that because this is such a rapidly changing thing, that they are giving us some leeway to conduct the final negotiations and come up with what is best in absence of, of a meeting.
Right. Section 3 of the resolution delegates the administrative authority to the chairman, the chief executive officer, and the chief financial officer to contract with the CDFI or any other company that the board approves to administer the program in accordance with, general accordance with that Exhibit A, and then to grant loans in accordance with Exhibit A and execute and deliver documents necessary and proper to deal with the program. The idea here is that some of the, getting down to the details is permitted. The board can delegate those, the important thing is that the board takes care of the budget and then has its officers execute in accordance with those broad parameters. And of course, the board can add whatever parameters, additional parameters it desires, and the board can, call a meeting, and if they don't like something, they could come back and they can require the officers to report regularly to the board so that the board can keep an eye on what they're doing.
So, again, this is Tim Dean. I just want to, let the board know, we're certainly not, the intention is not to circumvent the will of the board. The intention is to give you the parameters of the maximum expenditure and giving you an idea of the possibilities of how it could occur. Just as an example, because of the need and because of the, I would say the challenges faced by businesses, obviously we would like to get this in place as quickly as possible. Right after this meeting, and depending on what is approved, we would begin the final discussions with Community Capital to identify the best way to do this. And also, of course, Don will be vetting anything that we're looking at to make sure that it's fully compliant with the law and the interest rate and all those things. But we're just concerned that in working out those details, if we had to do a public notice and, call another meeting, if the board required us to have a more narrow approval, it would really delay the implementation of the program at a time when time is of the essence. So, that being said, I assure the board that as we finalize things, we would certainly keep you informed were you to give us the authority to move forward. We would keep you informed of the development of it and the final product that's approved within the parameters of the motion. And if for any reason it was outside of those parameters, we would certainly call a meeting of the board. Any questions or comments? Okay, Don Capolino, do you feel that the proposal that you put forward still stands if it was to be motioned and seconded and voted on? Is there any modification that needs to be done after the discussion we've had?
Yeah, no, I think that the discussion is clear. If there's anything that you want to perhaps the small business definition
yes.
should be made clear to qualify. Okay. And just place it in there. That's really the major issue here. No?
Okay, so the initial discussion was 5 or less employees. Sarah has proposed amending that to 10, up to 10 full FTEs. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, so that expands the number of businesses that could apply some, but it also is just reflective of the fact that some businesses may have a number of part-time employees as well. Okay, anything else, Don?
No. I mean, I think that covers it.
Okay, so at this time, what I would like to ask is if anybody would be willing to make a motion to approve this proposal.
Al Turgiani, I'll make the motion approved as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Alan. Don. Okay, Jasmine, will you please take a vote?
Yes, sure. Tim Dean,
Approve.
Mark Doyle,
I approve.
Kathy Bauer.
Kathy has a conflict. She's not on the call.
Oh, that's right, yes.
Oh, yes, correct. Jamie Pacone,
Approve.
Don Sagliano,
Unmute, Don. Oh, there he goes.
Al Torrigiani.
Approved.
Okay. So thank you all. And again, we
Point
will.
of order, Mr. Chairman, can you direct Jasmine to also denote that Stacy Langenthal was
Yes.
not participating in the roll call vote that was taken?
Jasmine, did you note that, please?
Yes, yes, I know.
Thank you,
I'll note that,
Jasmine.
yes. Mhm.
Okay, so again, I thank the board, and we will keep in close contact with you as this proposal develops. And I do appreciate your granting us a little bit amount of flexibility because of the time situation. Stacy, I'm sorry, Sarah, at this time, do you want to invite Kathy to come back on the call?
Yes, I will text her now.
Okay, we're gonna pause for. I'm going to say we're going to pause for 60 seconds. If anybody needs to get up and walk or use the restroom, please feel free, and we'll reconvene in 60 seconds when Kathy is back on.
Sarah, I should continue to record?
Yes, you should.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Glasses out there?
So does that mean your house gets help?
Kathy, have you been able to log back in yet? Okay, I'm going to give her just a little bit more time. Can I just check, Kathy, if you've been able to join yet?
She
All right, I'm
is,
gonna,
she just sent me a text that she's on hold. Marilyn, do you see her? She says that she's
No.
waiting for you to let her into the meeting.
Okay. I don't, oh, here we go. Kathy, can you hear me? I admitted her.
Kathy, you may be on mute.
She's on.
She's on, oh, there she is.
Okay, I'm back.
Great. Okay, for the minutes, I would just like to thank Kathy for acknowledging her conflict and acknowledge that she's now rejoined the meeting for the purposes of our ongoing meeting. So again, the purpose of this discussion about the budget is that we just talked about the distress that the businesses in Dutchess County and, you know, the nation are in. One of the other items to talk about, this is something that I asked Sarah to develop, is our county is also in financial, I'm not going to say financial distress because they're not in any, you know, risk of default or anything. But as we all know, our county has been in a very good financial position for a number of years. And in fact, in the current year, they had tens of millions of dollars in reserve funds in anticipation of crises, but nobody predicted this one. And so as a result of out of budget expenditures, the county by the time the year-end budget is done, they will have, it appears, have exhausted their reserve funds. And of course, with tax revenue down and expenses likely to be up again in the coming budget, the county does, face the possibility of shortfalls and or increasing taxes, or cutting services. So one of the things I wanted to have a discussion about was the possibility of two things. One of them is considering we have an outstanding amount from the county, which is, I believe, about $430,000 in this budget year.
450.
450,000 in this budget year. The discussion I wanted to have is we could, in theory, in effect, decline that money if we felt that we wanted to, if we could, within our financial capabilities, if we could actually decline that money and allow the county, in effect, to keep that 450,000, which was committed to us and is, currently going to be paid to us. The effect of that, of course, would be on top of the 500,000 that we discussed as we just added to our expenses. It would be removing that $450,000 in revenue. And so it would be an almost $1 million swing in our budget. And so, and again, this is a discussion. It is not necessarily a recommendation, but it's something I thought we should talk about and try and balance out, our IDA mission, of course, is to do business development. And we do help the county with that. And, we do have funds that we hold in reserve. And the reason that we have funds right now is not because we don't anticipate using them. Our money comes in most of the time we get large infusions of money that has to last us and help us to overcome our normal, what I'm going to call a normal operating deficit on a year-to-year basis. Examples, Cricket Valley is an example of where we brought in a substantial amount of funds. In that case, it could be the IDA or the LDC, but the point being is that we don't have a steady revenue projection. But right now, we do have a substantial amount of reserves in the IDA and the LDC. And our projections, we use that money to say that we know that we can be viable for 4 or 5 years into the future if we don't receive any other large infusions of capital. And my question, if whoever's phone is ringing, if you could mute that for the moment, I would appreciate it. My comment or my thought was, in these times, should the board be having such a long horizon when there's such immediate need for funds? And would we consider taking the risk of shortening our guaranteed survival from a 5-year period, let's say, to a shorter period, with the assumption that the money's needed now and the hope that we would, in the next 2 or 3 years, have a project that comes forward that would help us to replenish our coffers, as has happened in the past. So with that opening comment, what I asked Sarah to do was to give us a couple of scenarios on what would happen should we consider, if we agreed for this year to forego the $430,000 that we promised, how that would run out, that loss of that money, in addition to the money that we just expended for the $500,000, what our moving forward budgets could look like. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you to just go through what your models are here.
Sure. So can everyone see my screen?
Let's put it this way. If you can't and you don't have it in front of you, please let us know.
I don't have it in front of me. This is Kathy.
Kathy?
Are you calling in, Kathy, or are you?
Yes, I'm calling in. I can't go into Zoom through my work.
Got it. Does
Okay.
somebody have the ability to email this Kathy, or did we email it before?
It was emailed, I think it was emailed yesterday.
Yeah, I emailed it last night in case people were going to call in.
So Sarah, do you have it in front
Okay,
of
I
you that
found
you
it.
could? Oh,
Find it.
good. Perfect.
Okay.
So there's a couple of things. There's an LDC budget scenarios and projections, and there's a scenario 1 and scenario 2, which I'm going to ask Sarah to talk about first. Go ahead, Sarah.
So, yeah, so this is a presentation that is made this morning, and it is on the screen, and it will be made part of the video. So the LDC projections you see in year 1 is basically, well, you'll see the column 1 is our audit, what was out of our audit. The current year projected 2020.
And Sarah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to be clear, the year that we follow, please, is it January or June? I just want you to clarify.
January, June, it's calendar year. Our fiscal year's calendar year.
Okay, great. So it's January to December.
January to December.
Okay,
So
good. Thank you.
our current year projected under scenario 1, you'll see that our expected admin fee is that 167. That is the Vassar bond refinancing that we did earlier this year. We have no other LDC projects in the queue, so that is that budget, that is that amount. The program revenue, we have reduced that to 30,000 because our program revenue is tied to our ability to do events. The event we have this year is the BEAs, and given the pandemic, we don't know if we will be able to gather the revenue that we had in the past as a result of the pandemic. So we just put a best guess estimate of our revenue would be 30,000 in that case. And then the 633 that you see there is a combination of our service contract revenue, which is the $150,000 from the IDA for administrative fees, administrative services, the 450 from the county, and then rent that we receive from WIB as they are co-located in our space. So that is that 633. The investment earning is a guess on our what we expect will be our investment interest earning. And then the administrative expenses and remain the same as that was approved by the board back in October. And then the professional service contract you'll see has the revolving loan fund program, or the program, as well as added in there are potential admin fees to run that new COVID relief program. So that gives us a projected shortfall of about 825,000, and
800, yes.
And and then again reducing our fund balance by that amount. So then going forward, you'll see that we did reduce our administrative fees for the forwarding years only because the past couple years, the LDC, our projects have been really mostly the refinancing of IDA bonds to LDC bonds. And then the exception to that large project is the Vassar Brothers Hospital Tower. So prior to 2015, when these bonds were being converted, the average fee revenue that the LDC was receiving was about 80,000. So I use that figure as 80,000 because looking in our portfolio, the earliest any of our current bonds can seek refinancing will be in the year 2025. So assuming that none of our existing LDC bonds can be refinanced, and that these would be, defined to us as new bonds, I reduced that to 80,000. And then one thing that, you know, is again, up in the air is depending on how the loan is operated, we may or may not see that return or proceeds from loans.
Okay. And Sarah, talk about, are you there, Sarah?
Yes, can you see me?
Yes, now I can. Okay, so in projected 2021, the other thing that we, again, from a conservative standpoint, you'll notice that we only have 182,000 in service contract revenue. The reason for that is we are concerned that the county next year may not be able to have trouble funding us at the level they have in the past. So we made an assumption for this illustration that the county, if we were to, not receive county revenue next year, what that, would do to the budget. It does assume in 2021. And so that would affect our revenue in 2021. And then in 2022 and beyond, we made the assumption that we would once again begin getting the county revenue at the historic levels, because we're hoping by that time, maybe there'll be a recovery and the county would be able to do so. But being conservative in 2021, again, we wanted to make an assumption that the county could not fund us in 2021. Now, Sarah, I'm going to ask you to do scenario 2 just so people can see what that one is.
Okay, so Don Sagliano, it looked like you might have a question or comment.
Yeah, I did. I realize we're focusing on the revenues. What, based upon this scenario or the next one that you're going to bring up, can you at least speak to any avenues as to how LDC could look at the operating expenses and speak to that? Because if there's no money coming in, then we can't have any expenses.
Yes. So our largest expense on the LDC side is our professional service. Through the LDC, the professional service contract includes our marketing contract with BCI, which is about 250,000. So if we were to make while we could probably make, a 10% cut across just our other administrative expenses, the real place where we would do cost savings would be through our professional service contract and potentially not having a marketing contract, which would be actually quite difficult for the organization as we are responsible for marketing the county as a place for business to invest, for business to stay. So it would be a hardship, but that's probably where we would have to see our cost savings.
So, so I just want to add to that. We really would be, what we're really be saying is that the IDA would be,
Or the LDC,
I'm sorry, the LDC in this discussion would be assuming more of the actual cost of programs that it administers, that currently we are partially funded by the county for doing, work that the county needs. So, so I am not necessarily proposing that there's a lot of expenses that we would be cutting, because we still want to achieve the mission of the organization, which is to promote economic development in Dutchess County. So we would become more reliant on fees to accomplish that during this time period. So Sarah, again, I just think to help explain the difference in these, can you talk about scenario 2 and just what changed in that so people can understand what we want them to understand about it.
Yep. So scenario 2 uses the same assumptions as scenario 1, but you will see in current year projected 2020 under the the service contract revenue that 450,000 has been taken out of that. That is under the assumption that the county finds itself in a position where they are not able to proceed with the contract with the LDC, or in the case, in an alternative situation where the organization may forego that income.
So this is the scenario that I mentioned in the beginning of the discussion, where we could consider in this year, the county has already committed to us to pay us 430 or 450,000. I wanted a discussion to take place where we actually proactively could consider foregoing the amount that's committed, and that would therefore take the service contract in 2020 from 633 down to 182. And so if you look along the bottom of that sheet and compare it to scenario 1, you can see that without, under the assumptions that we've made, that would change our projection about our assets by 2024. Instead of having 360,000, we would actually be in the negative if we were to do that. Again, there's the possibility, under both assumptions, we're also suggesting we may not get any money from the county next year. There is a possibility that we may get all of it, we may get some of it. And there's also the possibility, we don't know how much of the 500,000 that we are making available for this loan program will actually be spent. So there's a lot of, still a lot that's not known, but I just wanted sort of a worst case discussion to take place about, if we were to forego. And then the other part of this, and again, I'll open it back up for questions in a second. One of the questions that I thought could be asked is the board may say, well, if we ran out of money in the LDC, what types of support could the LDC ask for or could be available from the IDA, which has its own budget and its own requirements for spending? If we, for some reason, if it was possible, would there be money in the IDA that could perhaps help to subsidize the LDC? And I'm going to ask Sarah and Don to talk about that, which is the third document, which is the IDA budget projections. And again, I want to be clear, we're talking about possibilities. We can't speak for the IDA. We would have to do that at a separate meeting, but I just want to know what is possible based on the rules and regulations about how IDAs could help LDCs.
So Tim, the IDA is very limited in its ability, again, to lend or grant its money. And so this would have to be, if the IDA was looking to support the LDC, it would have to be in a fair market rate service contract. And an example of where that happened was last year. Last year, the IDA decided to fund the LDC for economic development services in lieu of a county contract between the LDC and the IDA, as well as contribute more towards tourism. So last year, if you remember, we had a service contract between the IDA and tourism and IDA and LDC equivalent to about $1.6 million. So that's where it occurred last year. And so if we were to transfer money again, it would have to be for market rate services. And so the budget projections that you put forward for the IDA, just
really show us if we were not to have another significant project come in where the IDA received fees, based on our current, use of funds, by 2024, we would be, down to less than $1 million in assets. And again, that's a worst case scenario. A lot can happen between now and then. There may be projects that come to us that do generate fees. And so, again, I just wanted the LDC board to know, I don't know how much we could expect to receive from the IDA if the LDC did run into a scenario where we began to have very few assets left. So again, I want to be clear. I bring this up for discussion, just trying to prompt some discussion about how far can either of the organizations, and specifically right now the LDC, go in fulfilling our mission, which is to help economic development in the county, and in the role that we do in supporting the county with a lot of our efforts to promote the economy. Could we afford to take on more of that burden without the county's help? And with that, I'm going to ask people on the board to comment about if they think that we should be considering some type of a proactive withdrawal of our request for money this year. That's really the specific question.
Mark Doyle here.
Yes, Mark.
I'd like to speak in favor of taking a proactive stance. I think that it's essential for us to look at our position in working cooperatively with the county on exactly the same mission, which is economic development. So to the extent that, I often argue strenuously for maintaining a separation of funding and so on, obviously our mission is a joint mission. So I think taking a proactive stance in not accepting the funding as you've proposed, sort of language-wise, certainly puts us in good stead, and is also at the same time kind of realistic as well. So I support that. Sarah, I think that this is tough for staff, obviously, and because we want as a board to make sure that we're taking steps to assure the longevity of the organization. But it's not really a but. We have to work hard together to make that come about. I think the county is in a good situation, having really done well in the last few years. So hopefully we can pick up from there. That's about what
Thank you, Mark.
like.
Any other comments?
This is Kathy Bauer. I agree with everything that Mark said about the county funding. I do think we should continue on the expense side with the marketing of the county.
Yes.
I have seen a lot of businesses that are slow right now, taking advantage of the slow time to do expansion or other projects that they had been putting off because they were too busy. And I feel we have to continue the marketing to try to draw the businesses and promote the economic economy during this time.
Thank you, Kathy. To be clear, that is our intention, and that's why when Don Sagliano asked about reductions in expenses, I want the message to be that we are really taking on more of the cost within our funds, because we do think it's important that they continue at this time. And again, I also want to restate what I stated before, and that is that these are worst case scenarios, and so this truly, this assumes that we would not be receiving any other funds for projects. And I think it's highly likely, and again, this is more on the IDA side, but in a 4 or 5 year, between now and 2024, I think it's highly likely that there will be other projects that come before us, because this truly is, it's a severe situation, but it's temporary. And Dutchess County continues and will remain to be a very attractive place for future development. And in some cases, I think even more, because this crisis has somewhat dampened the desire for some people to be in more crowded cities. And so I think you're going to see more businesses and people want to, move further north. And so I think from a development standpoint, Dutchess County will be in a good position. And so the possibility of us adding to our revenue is I think highly probable. Other questions or comments?
So Tim,
Yes.
I just wanted to also, because I didn't focus it on the IDA because this is the LDC
Yes.
budget, is
Yes.
Just one thing again, this, I do want to stress, this is worst case scenario. So, if we are doing a loan program where we are not going to receive proceeds, that, the bottom line in scenario 2 would, pretty much would happen, what's projected in 2024 would happen in 2023 without those loan proceeds.
Right, and point that's so again, that's fair. So in the scenario 2, and thank you for pointing it out, Sarah, that's important. You'll notice that Sarah in 2021, 2022, and 2023, she had put in, there's 141,000 each year, which was an estimate of what we would collect if it was a revolving loan fund. We would be getting payments, and it was a reflection of collections of some funds. And it is probably more likely that we would be paying administrative costs, and so we would not be getting loan proceeds back. So if we did, in fact, expend $500,000 in administration expenses, that 141,000 would not be there. So that would alter the budget.
Yeah, so you would be seeing that we would be $500,000 or about 450, an additional 450,000.
Well, we would have to subtract 141,000 from 2021, 22, and 23's bottom line. Yeah. So is there anybody that didn't understand what I just explained? Please let me know and I'll be more clear about it. So just to say 2000 under scenario 2, 2021, the bottom line, instead of being 1,144,000, would be about 1 million. Okay, and in 2022, we would be more like 700,000 approximately, and in 2023, we would be at about 300,000. Is that correct, Sarah? Is that about right?
About
okay.
Right.
So again, that's assuming that it also makes the assumption that we expended the entire 500,000 in 2020 on this revolving loan fund, which I think personally is highly unlikely, but
Yes.
Worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario. So, and then the other thing I do want to highlight on the IDA side that I didn't mention is that there is in the governor's budget passed a prevailing wage provision on IDA projects, and that would go into effect the earliest in 2022. So we don't know at this point what impact that would have on IDA projects. But I just put that as a note that is something that we would have to consider and that may have an impact. But since we were only focusing on the LDC, I only did the LDC.
Yep. And I want to also be clear, there is nothing that states that we have to proactively offer to forgo the entire amount that the county has given us. If someone felt that it was more appropriate to suggest a partial amount, I don't have any objections. Again, any other questions or comments? Okay, what I'm going to ask, based on the discussion, just to get a sense of where we're at, and I appreciate everybody staying on this call so long, would anybody be willing to make a motion that we direct Sarah to proactively notify the county that we will withdraw or forgo the funding that was committed to us in the 2020 year in the amount of, it's 450,000, Sarah? Is that correct?
451 to be exact.
451,000. Would anyone be willing to make a motion? Okay, Don Sagliano made the
Don
motion.
Sagliano moved it. Sorry.
Yep. Do I have a second?
This is Kathy Bauer. I'll make the second.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, Jasmine, could you please take a roll call vote?
Sure. Tim Dean,
In favor?
Mark Doyle,
Yes, approve.
Kathy Bauer,
In favor?
Jamie Picone,
In favor.
Don Sagliano,
In favor?
Al Torrigiani.
Approved.
Okay, so
Thank you.
I would like to thank the board for that. I think that is an awesome, show of support from our organization to the county. At the same time, I do want Sarah, please explain to the staff that the board has every confidence that we will not have a worst case scenario, and we are committed to this organization, well beyond the period that we've been looking at.
So I will.
Good. So is there anything else on the agenda?
So no.
Okay, does anybody have anything else that needs to be discussed? All right, with that, I thank everybody for their time, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.